Welcome, everybody. It's time once again for the next chapter with Charlie Hedges as he explores turning the page on his life and yours. Hey, Charlie.
Hey, Paul. It's good to be here with you. Now, today is a special show, as are all of them, I think. At least that's what I say. But it's special today because I have a gifted friend willing to step in when I need help. I had a truly last-minute cancellation of a pre-planned guest, and Terry agreed to come right in and help out with some stories. And so today we have a most interesting episode with little prep time, and it has to do with a recent Sabbath Moment post that Terry wrote this: I believe in the healing power of revisiting, because sometimes we need stories more than food to stay alive. They remind us what really matters and allow us to see and connect with our heart. Stories save us. So today, we're going to talk about favorite stories from movies, books, and personal life. And with that, let's bring on Hirsch. Yo, Hirsch, what's up, man?
Charles, how are you?
I am good. I am more tickled with this topic than I was with what I had planned.
Well, that's a good that's a good memoir title.
That is a good memoir. I'm happy. I'm more happy with this life than the one I had planned.
And exactly, I'm more happy with this one than the one I had all planned out.
Is that anything to do with marriage?
You name it, it can have to. You know what's amazing? Because it's from the aspect, talking as clergy now, and then you know this in church work, but from seminary days, we were taught how to preach and how to, I didn't even know how, you know how to do it. What do you do when you try to understand the scripture? You have to.
Oh, exegesis.
Thank you. But we forget stories are the power there, forgot it. And we were not taught use stories when we teach. We were taught to give lessons.
Taught to give lessons? Yeah, or meaning. I always love, one of the things that I just cracked up about was word exegesis and finding this Greek word really means, and they would go into this dialogue about what it meant 2 centuries prior, and by the time they were done exegeting a passage, it had nothing to do with what the author was trying to say, but it was exegeted by vocabulary and sentence structure to a point.
Yeah. My whole thing, obviously, I don't even know if I've gone off track here, but the whole point was Jesus told stories.
Yeah.
Parables, they called them, but told stories. Only preached one sermon.
Yeah. Or 2, depending on which way you look at Luke or Matthew, right?
Yeah, I know, but I'm going to go with my theory.
Okay, I will too. I'll go with 1. So let's move. Let's move to the heart of We'll move right into it. And in an episode, I don't know how long it was an episode, a column or an essay or whatever you call the blogs, the posts of Sabbath Moment, you wrote on stories, and I use that quote above, but you wrote a really good story from, his name just eluded me, from Cold Mountain, Charles Fraser.
Actually, yeah, his name is the same as yours, Charles Fraser.
Yeah, and you wrote a really good story on Inman and his battle in the Civil War, battle of the Crater, and perhaps you might give us a clue who Inman is, and then tell us that story of battle.
But before I tell you the story, I used to spend time in a place called the Swag, which is in North Carolina. It's in those mountains, Blue Ridge Mountains, and it was a B&B, but they had storytellers come in, and I would invited in to tell stories to people.
Oh, really? So, you've never told me that.
Oh, it's one of the best places. It's an exquisite place to visit. And I would sit around in the afternoon and I would tell stories. And then in the evening I would tell stories. So I was the storyteller, which was great. But this is what's so wonderful. It's because you're in the Blue Ridge Mountains. You sit out and you look out, and one of the guest that they had at one time was Charles Frazier.
Oh, really?
And, you ready for this? That one in those rooms, you look out that one side of those rooms, Cold Mountain.
See what? Cold Mountain? Yeah?
Yes.
There is a real thing called Cold Mountain.
Yeah, this is real. It's Cold Mountain. It's in the Blue Ridge. But anyway, a marvelous thing, a letter from Charles Frazier to the owners of the swag there that they have framed and everything that hangs there. So you can go to this one room and you can look out at Cold Mountain and you can see Charles Frazier talking about the fact that as he was writing this book, in other words, it's grounded in something that is real and tangible and visceral. It's the power of it.
Okay.
So Inman fought. He fought for the Confederate side, and that battle you talked about, the Battle of the Crater, it wouldn't be the only one. Those battles were gruesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Graphic, kind that you can't really even Photoshop. And there's the same too in several parts of the world now. Cruelty and suffering, and it's gruesome. So there's obviously, with all of the people who are wounded in these battles, set up these tents and they're medically attended to, but then just minimalist sort of ways.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
With Inman, there's another named Oakley who's helping Inman. And what they're doing, because remember they fought in trenches for some of those battles, right? Dug trenches and down the trenches and they'd raise up and shoot. And so Inman and Oakley and a couple of other people distribute supplies in those 10 trenches. So they'd go along through the trenches and there'd be, they weren't, what'd they throw? They weren't bombs, but you remember those things that launched the stuff?
I don't. I'm not a historian, so I really don't.
Yeah, but so Inman, he's just a young kid, too young to have been drafted, so to speak.
And may I just say, just for our listeners, that Inman is he's the lead character in the book, and he's a powerful character. I mean, his just internally and who he is very important. And so his character doesn't allow himself to give voice to all that internal. Exactly. And so it's stored in there. It comes out in certain ways. But as they're going through the trenches, this young kid, too young to be there, is wounded, like mortally wounded. And so he's taken to this ER. And so in the scene, you're in the movie now. This was the scene in the book. I loved the book. Obviously, I read the book before the movie. But there's all the cots next to each other. It's all body after body wounded. And one of them includes this young boy named Oakley. And so there are people who are there to give comfort. In other words, there's going to be final countdown minutes now for almost everybody in the room, maybe hours. And so there are people to go from bed to bed, including the medical people and then friends who are like Inman. And then there's a character in the book. His name is Rod, and he plays a fiddle. And he had to go through but he went through the tent, stand by the bed, and hopefully entertain or somehow console these kids who are dying to play music. And so there's a great scene where this Strobod is standing at the bed of young Oakley. He's mortally wounded. Inman's right there. And Strobod is playing something on his fiddle. And Oakley speaks. He just says, "Oh." And then he says, "Please play me something sweet. A girl is waiting for me." Inman says to the fiddler, "You heard him." And Strobod says, "I only know a couple of tunes." You could tell he doesn't know what to do because he doesn't know how to respond to this. And then you hear Oakley say, "Play me a song like when you're up on Bridges Creek. You're thirsty and the water is so cool." And the fiddler, his face is, "Oh my God, I don't know what to do." But then he said, "I don't know what that music is, but because it was a dying boy, puts bow to the string, and he starts playing the fiddle, and the music is haunting, lilting, and evocative. All we know is that music affirms that even when life is dark, faith still holds us.
and it carried that boy back up to Cold Mountain. I know, telling that story, okay, that story touched me, but now when I go out and speak, tell that story, we can all take that story with us.
I love that story. And that was in your post that talked about music. I don't want to call it hidden power of music, but we forget that music, the soothing part of music that speaks what words cannot express.
But music is literally story. Music is just telling your story with notes and sound.
And the beauty too, Terry, is that the fiddler had that story, had that music in him, and wasn't even aware.
See, now there's the key. That's it was there. Yeah, take me up. Yeah, and it was there, and he didn't know it because we have them in us, and we bury it with other stuff.
To allow that private, secret part of us to become real.
Yeah, because we don't believe that part of us, which is the very vulnerable part of us. We don't believe that there's sufficiency there, and exquisite sufficiency that there is in that. The story, the affirmation is just gifts of enough in those affirmations.
Yeah.
Gifts of enough.
I just listened to a book by a guy that I'm very fond of named Derek Severs, and he has a book that's called Useful, Not True. And he talks about truth. He says there's really two kinds of truth. There's that identifiable, provable, objectifiable, concrete fact truth that is virtually useless in every one of our lives. And then there is the truth that is our perspective, our beliefs, our opinions. There are truths like music that are deep in the core of us, deep in who we are as people, and we don't even realize the truth of these truths, that how much we resonate with them and really understand. You can understand this young boy wanting to revisit something that even he couldn't articulate what he wanted to revisit. But he wanted to revisit hope, wanted to revisit something in the past. Who knows what he wanted to revisit.
Yeah, but this is the thing about stories, which are brilliant and powerful, is going back to your thing about what were they trying to do with the words in the Bible?
Exegete.
Yeah. When you're doing the exegeting, keep closing things down more and more.
Yeah.
You're telling a story and playing music, you're opening things up to make a space for that, honoring it. So the exquisite part about that story is honoring the space for that boy, mourn and to love and to die.
Pam and I, maybe a couple of months ago, went to the Segerstam Concert Hall and saw Lyle Lovett, who is getting old. Lyle Lovett, I think he's 65, something like that, with a 3-year-old child. He's even rolling his eyes saying, what am I doing? Our 4-year-old child. But his entire concert was intermittent stories. He had a story for every song. Mm-hmm. He would tell a story, then he would sing the song. Tell a story, then sing a song. It was a beautiful concert. It was so if you're familiar with Lyle Lovett at all, it's so Lyle Lovett, but it's a radical version of Lyle Lovett.
I've seen him 3 times.
Have you? But I've never seen him do a story before every song.
Yeah, I love Lyle Lovett.
Talk about stories. A Lyle Lovett story, and Lyle Lovett is so fun, especially that he married Julia Roberts, which no one can understand how that happened. But he had a group that was the front group for him for a concert one time, and it was this group of, they were like Mexican, what do you call them? The mariachis, except it was just maybe 18 or 20 guitars and fiddles and basses and all sorts of things. And they sang, the last song they sang was a song about love. And it was riveting. People got tears, and it's just such a moving piece. And then Lyle comes on right afterwards. So it's not this long break. He comes on right after, and he says, us boys in Texas know something about love, too. Let me sing you a love song. And he sang, I Love My Truck.
Did he really?
He sang "I Love My Truck." Yep, that's one of Lyle Lovett's famous songs. For those who don't know,
Yeah.
That's,
Wow.
so let's move on to another story from yet another movie, and then we'll go to a couple of other things. But this is storytelling time. Now, there's another movie that both of us were quite fond of. It seems I don't know, when was Cold Mountain written or when was it done?
I would have no clue.
Yeah, because everything I'm doing for the rest of the show happened in the 80s, except one with my son happened in the mid-90s. But the 80s were somehow a powerful decade for me. And this movie called Dominic and Eugene, and it stars Ray Liotta as Eugene and Tom Hulce as Dominic. And the setup is, and this is a humorous story, Dominic and Eugene are twins. Now, Dominic had a life-altering accident when he was young, and we'll get into that, how he was mistreated by his father. And his current job, now they're in their 20s, late 20s, and Dominic is a trash collector, rides alongside the trash truck and goes outside, picks up the trash cans and throws the trash cans in the bin. And it's not all automatic like it is now. There were people who actually picked up the trash cans and threw the trash in a bin and then loaded it into the truck, and he would go along. And his brother, Eugene, who is Ray Liotta, is a doctor.
He's studying to be one, yeah.
Oh, is he studying to be one? He's not a doctor yet?
Yeah.
Okay,
But
thought...
you know who pays for his education? Brother with the trash collecting.
Did he really?
Yeah, that's what's financing his brother's education.
Tom Hulce is brilliant. He did this movie and he did Amadeus, near the same time.
Amadeus, yeah.
Yeah, he's just fabulous in those movies. This movie, it's almost the opening of the movie. If you remember, Dominic is home with his dog, and Eugene, the med student, comes in the door, and Dom it's just been licked all over the place by the dog, and Dominic is going, "Ooh, I can't believe the dog licked me," and all this stuff. And Eugene says, "Don't worry, Dominic. Dog's mouth is 7 times cleaner than a human mouth." And that was so poignant. And Tom Hulce started laughing and loved it. It was just for me, it was a simple story, but it was so profound. The love between the two, and the trust and the caring and the honesty.
Yeah.
Then we come to the story that you and I both tell. Why don't you tell the story of when Dominic, what would you call his deficiency?
You just call it an intellectual disability. In other words, his brain got damaged somehow.
Yes, and
it got damaged because he hit his head several times. He was pushed down the stairs by his dad. His dad used to abuse him.
Tell the story of when he walked into the church.
So because his dad, and so he, a lot of that with people, because abuse triggers stuff in the person abused, and it triggers stuff in the people who know about it, and you have to know, you don't know how to process it because of his let's call it a disability. Because of his disability, he could only see things a certain way, but in his heart, his spirit was unbelievably fully alive. And that's what his brother, Eugene, loved about him. And the scene, because Dominic used to like to go into a church to pray. He would go right down to the front. So it would be...
Right down to the altar. Yeah,
down to the altar.
To the kneeling rail.
Where there are kneelers.
Yep.
You can get on your knees and you can pray. And if you've gone to any Catholic church, vast majority of them are going to have a crucifix, which is the Christ on the cross, right there on the wall behind at the altar. Big one. It takes up. And there's this amazing scene because he's trying to unpack his own way, pain and his relationships with his brother and the woman his brother's dating and all this kind of stuff. and realizing that the pain in him is real too. He doesn't know how to express it. He tries to pray, and he sees Jesus crucified, bloody, literally bloody as they are with those. And his prayer is, I was God, I would never let them do that to my boy.
And the movie house is silent.
And everyone stops.
Yeah. Because that was so real to Eugene, to Dominic. And I have this feeling, Terry, that needs to be our response in reading the gospel. That needs to be our first response rather than how quickly we go to the glory of the death, but there was nothing glorifying about the death.
Yes, and or how quickly we go to, here's what I think that means. Just stop. Stop.
Feel the anguish.
Music. Yeah, listen to the music at the deathbed. Feel the pain. Someone sees a child abused, and we're praying to that child, speaking of Jesus. Anyway, the power of stories, the power of making space, just sitting with it, that touches something in us deep.
We've lost that, haven't we? Or
Yeah,
neglected it.
Yeah.
But I take it back, or do TV series, do they bring out that part of us, the storytelling and the character development and how attached we are to characters? Do we find that in TV series?
Some do, yeah, some do. Some are really exceptional storytellers, and the ones that are great storytellers, it's the same with movies that you watch that are great storytellers, invite you into the story. And it's one of the things that they have to deal with in writing that is, we do this in such a way to trick you into the story or just make the story available to you. And that's why great storytelling, when I go out and speak for a living, and people will ask a question about any particular topic, even something like what's going on in our world today. And my response is always this: I tell you the story. The story will contain more for what we need to hold with this than any immediate response I'm going to give you about it's right or wrong or how we see it.
Yeah.
Here's why. Because in the story, we ground ourselves in what is real within us. And from there, we can actually choose. We can choose. We're not reacting anymore. Not reacting.
Or do we choose or do we not choose? Does it hits a part of us that we really don't have a choice of our response because it hits a raw chord inside of us.
But yeah, exactly. But the choice is to honor that raw core. It's a choice.
Yes. Okay. Then you have a choice. Yes. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Once the story has done its work, you have a choice if you allow it to do its work.
Yeah.
That's what I because my wife and I are TV series people on different platforms. Yeah. And I heard a producer once say, and I hope I have this right, I could have them reversed, honestly, but I think it's right, that one of the main differences between movie and TV series is that the movie is interested in the narrative arc, and it's interested in that it's going somewhere, that there's going to be a conclusion, that it's taking us somewhere, drawing us, and it's doing it through characters. Don't get me wrong, it's doing it through characters. But the series, especially we're watching Billions right now for the first time, and it's 7 seasons, or I don't know. But there is a narrative arc that's going on, 2 guys doing battle against each other, but it really comes to character development. How do those it's about characters. Movies are about the narrative arc. TV series are about the characters. And you know what I told Pam? It was a couple of years ago. I realized I like this show because they're my friends. I've become attached to these people on the show. And I think that's very common with TV, is that these become your friends.
Yeah, because, we love BBC dramas, exquisite stories, yeah. And we watch it unfold, and we watch the unfolding of those stories just which is what I love to tell about the unfolding. When I do the Bible, it's about stories. It's about the unfolding of those stories. And it's the same invitation we have. See, this is the Native American culture had this
very much,
and they taught their kids. Here's the story. See how you fit in the story. They kept telling the story and passed it on. See how you fit in the story. And I love that.
Yeah, that is just that's so true. I had a grand, beautiful thought that I don't even know why I'm saying it because it's gone. I'm just saying it was a grand, beautiful thought that maybe will occur to me. I want to tell a story, but it's a real life story. And I was thinking as I was preparing the show, I was thinking of what stories in my life have really impacted me. I had lunch with a guy today, or late lunch before the show, and he asked, tell me, what was it like to be the parent of a player who won the World Series? And I'm not going to tell that story because it was so surreal, I don't even know. It's hard to even access because it was otherworldly. The whole process was otherworldly. And every game counted, every moment counted. But with this same child, Terry, he was 4 or 5 years old. And we were driving on Laguna Canyon Road, just coming up from Laguna Beach, from the Coast Highway. And it was a beautiful time of sunset. And as you know, in Laguna Beach, sometimes with the clouds that are there, the sunsets can be remarkable. And he and I were singing together. Now, I know he's not more than 5 years old, and he was singing along with me a David Wilcox song called Prosperity. Do you remember that song, Prosperity, where all the roots grow deeper when it's dry? And he could sing at 4 or 5. He could sing every single word. And we're singing that song, driving up, just coming off of Coast Highway, not far off Coast Highway. And I look in the side view mirror, and I see this sunset that is just spectacular. I pull off the side of the road and I said, Sonny, you've got to see this. And opened the door, went to the back seat, pulled him out of his car seat, held him in my arms, and said, look at that. And do you know, the child at this young age got it. He saw the sunset and he just goes, Dad. That one just, I don't remember the exact words, but it was Dad. That was something. And at a young age, he got it. And to this day, when when there's an amazing sunset, he will stop and say, Dad, look at that. And I don't think he even remembers Laguna Beach. But it was a story
But see, that's the amazing part about a story. Because you talked about rootedness. Stories, I'm a gardener. Stories send roots into our soul and our spirit. And from that grows that memory. From that grows that affirmation.
And those are, like we alluded to earlier, those are the truths. Those are the truths of life, not in quantum physics or in relativity, but in the truths of our spirit, in the truths of our soul, and the truths that resonate with the deepest part of us.
Correct. And yeah, exactly.
So I'm thinking here, as we're coming close to wrapping up, because I didn't plan on this being a long show, but there was, for me, Terry, there was a season of the 1980s, and that was, when did we meet? Probably 85, 86, 87?
Oh, before that. No, 84, 85.
Yeah. And then we made a pact in 87 or 88, and we did the blood handshake of say we're going to be friends, and right. I'll be damned if it hasn't lasted 40 years.
80, wow, holy moly. I was only 10 at the time.
Yeah. You're 10 years younger than me, so you were still a kid in your 20s. But I'm thinking of books that we both read, that we would go over these books together. I think we probably even recommended books to one another. But I'm thinking of books like, what's her name? I can't think of her name. Cat's Eye. Handmaid's Tale. What's her name?
Barbara.
No.
Oh, here we go.
Okay, anyway. Well, it's a book called Cat's Eye. It's about a group of young women, young girls that become women. And it talks about rivalry in high school. There's 3 girls, and they rotate. There's one girl that's the head girl, and they rotate her best friend. The 2 other girls are always rotating as best friend and trying to be best friend, and it's just how tacky adolescence can be. And as one of the lead is, I think is the lead character, the main girl, she, as she grows older and telling her, and she's talking to her ex-husband, and she realizes in this story, that I was going to tell him, but I don't think at 45 years old, he's ready to hear that he has potential. And that's a line from that. And then there's books like Glittering Images and our favorite, Pat Conroy's Prince of Tides. And then we can't forget A Prayer to Owen Meany by John Irving. And all these books were in the 80s. And these books have imprinted in both of us, have permanently imprinted stories of pain, faulty humanity, and then, of course, some kind of redemption in the field of grace.
100%.
Was it just me, or was that a season of great books, or was it just me? Because the 80s were just so powerful for me.
Yeah, for me too. I have all of those books still here in my bookshelves, and Owen Meany, one of my favorite quotes from Owen Meany.
I don't know. I should know it.
I know, but I had one of my favorite things from Owen Meany. I have not been able to use it in my blog. Can I read it to you?
Yeah, of course.
Because remember, he did scripture class. Owen Meany did scripture class.
That's right. I forgot.
Remember? And he says in
now this is tough for the audience that don't know Owen Meany. Is he in high school?
Yeah.
But he looks like he's in 5th grade.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And so Owen says, it's true that the disciples are stupid. They never understood what Jesus means. They're a bunch of bunglers, and they don't believe in God as much as they want to believe. They even betrayed Jesus. The point is, God doesn't love us because we're smart or because we're good. Stupid and we're bad, and God loves us anyway. Jesus already told the dumb shit disciples what was going to happen. The Son of Man will be delivered in the hands of men, and they will kill him. Remember? That was in Mark, right? And his teacher says, yeah, but let's not say dumb shit disciples in class, Owen.
Terry, I forgot all about that passage. And do you know what I did when I was a minister at South Coast Community Church? And
did you use that one?
I used it to the staff, to the pastoral staff. And I told that story, and I told about the dumb shit disciples. And there was an elder. I was in my 30s, and there was an elder minister who was in his 50s, near 60. And he's the one that came to me and says, you know something, Charlie? One day you're going to be a preacher. And it was based on John Irving's Owen Meany story of the dumb shit disciples.
Now I did not know that. That's great.
And you know what's weird? That goes back to our very first story, or one of our first stories in Dominic and Eugene, when the right answer is, I wouldn't let them do that to my boy. Owen Meany would feel the same way. He would get that.
Yeah.
He would get that. This has been very cool. You know what I want to do? I'm going to close. But you've told this story before, several times, but I want you to close with probably my all-time favorite Terry Hershey story. And that is you and Zach at a bakery on Vashon Island.
Vashon literally is an island, a small island where we lived for 25 years. Zach was born and raised there. He 27 now? But he would have been 9 at the time. And there's a place on Vashon. This is why I love this small towns, because this is literally a small town. It's just a single road through town there. And there's a place, it was called Bob's Bakery. And the great part about Bob's Bakery is it doesn't really matter. Bob one time owned it, but it doesn't really matter anymore. It's still going to be called Bob's Bakery. Just like anything, even if there's a new owner and they change the name, if you've lived there, you still call it Bob's Bakery. What I love about it is it's where you got coffee and fresh breakfast bakery stuff. And because it's Seattle, and Vashon was the home of Seattle's best coffee. It was at the time was the competitor to Starbucks. And Starbucks bought them. It still exists, Seattle's best coffee. And so we would go to Bob's to have coffee. It's real coffee. Not like coffee you get after church. That's not coffee. It's just real coffee. And so there was a bench out in front of Bob's. This is where you go and you chat. You knew everybody who was in there. Chat with them. And then the bench out front that was an old down log that was turned into a bench. Sat on the bench and we watched the cars go by because they just go by real slow and there's not that many of them. I'm just loving my coffee. Zach, 9 years old, he's eating a cinnamon, like a fresh-made cinnamon bun with the sauce, the juice. So Zach is not letting me be a part of this. Zach is taking bites. There's this cinnamon stuff going down his face. He's biting into this. And then he just says, Dad, it's just the life.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
And it's just like you with Austin and the sunset.
And it's like what we were talking about off the air before we began. And we were talking about titles for a book. And the title for the book that we came up with was The Life I Have is a Hell of a Lot Better Than the Life I Planned.
I'm going to write that down. I think that'll sell.
Yeah. And that's what we do have. And I think that's important. And hopefully that's what we've tried to do with telling stories today. Is the life we had is better than the life we have is better than the life we planned. And it's filled with stories, and it's filled with stories of pain and suffering and faulty humanity, and it's done upon us and us done to other people. But in the end, there's a redemptive part of it, and it's in the fields of grace.
Yeah, exactly, because the story grounds us, bounds us.
How tell me that?
In other words,
and we're done.
we're able to be in the present moment, the sacrament of the present moment, whether it's something, whatever's going on, we're allowed to be here now. And whatever that be here now is still sacred.
Amen. Hirsch, thanks, buddy.
Yeah, always good, Charles.
Okay. And I also want to thank our listeners for tuning into the next chapter with Charlie. And until next, this is Charlie Hedges signing off. Bye for now.